Hi everyone, welcome to our call on Cuba. What is the deal with the new travel regulations and what does it mean for your trip? So I'm Melanie Tucker with Rare Finds Travel, and I'm delighted today to have Ernesto on the line. Ernesto Lago, he is the owner of ELO Travel in New York City that specializes in unique trips to Cuba. So welcome, Ernesto.
Hi, Melanie. Thank you.
Hi. So the question that everyone wants to know really is, can you still travel to Cuba?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Up today, the regulation is still the same that for the last 2 years. Until the new regulation from OFAC comes out, everything is still the same. Those regulations are expected to come out in September 15th.
Okay. All right. So if you already have a trip booked now, what can you still go on after the new regulations? What happens if you already have a trip booked?
Yes. If you book your trip before the speech of Mr. President in Miami, you are good to go anytime you did that reservations, either hotels or airlines. So either or, you can go on the trip.
Okay.
If you book your trip after the speech, then you have to follow the new regulations.
Okay. So if you booked your entire trip or any part of your trip before the speech, which was about a month ago or so, if you booked your whole trip or any part of your trip before that speech, you're still fine to go and you do not have to abide by any new regulations that might come out. Correct?
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
Right.
Correct.
But if you hadn't booked your trip before then all of the regulations will apply if they do indeed come out on September 15th. Is this correct?
Exactly.
Okay, good. So
That's correct.
What are these new regulations then? What do they cover? What do they mean?
Well, it will be pretty much trying to cover all sanctions against the government of Cuba, specifically against the institutions that are administered by the Army of Cuba.
Okay, so what does that really mean to a traveler? Because that's a little confusing.
Basically, what the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to try to block the American people to stay in certain hotels in Cuba.
Okay.
Hotels that belong to a chain that is called Gaviota Tour. Gaviota Tour belongs to the Army of Cuba. So, in this case, there are several hotels, like 95% of the hotels in Old Havana belong to that chain, and still a few hotels that doesn't belong to them. In the rest of Havana, you can find, several hotels to stay in. So basically, the American people will be allowed to stay in hotels that they belong to a chain that is not Cuban.
Okay, so let me just repeat that to make sure I've got that straight. If the new regulations go through, there are whole family hotels under a corporation called Gaviota that will be forbidden for Americans, and that will include about 90% of the current hotels, including the Saratoga, Hotel Florida, and Los Mundros, a lot of the big popular hotels, correct?
Exactly.
Americans
correct.
Cannot stay there. There are hotels that are owned by other countries, like the Iberostar Stars, that will still be okay for Americans under the new sanctions, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And basically, what the U.S. government wants is to American citizens to stay all private residents in Cuba. That way, we support the new independent business people.
You mean like Airbnb or Casa?
Exactly.
So that's perfect, right? Because I know that your philosophy at ELO matches my philosophy at Rare Finds Travel, where that's a lot of what we want to do, not only to send people to locally owned lodging like the Casas or Airbnbs, but also to paladors, little privately owned restaurants, private galleries, local guides, all of these things that are more homegrown. That's what we do anyway. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly what we do.
Okay. All right. So.
Well, we are one of those. We are one of those agencies that we don't work with the Cuban tour operator. We practically everything that we do is with the Cuban populations. Our tour guides, drivers, everybody's directly with them. That we hire them, the Cuban government.
Okay.
And that's exactly what they used to do.
Okay, so that's good news. So that covers the hotels. What other parts of a person's trip would be affected by the new regulations? Like you said something about a group travel.
Yes. What the president told us about the amount of people. They didn't mention the amount of people but he said that they have to be in groups. Now, what is considered 2, 3, 4, 5? That's the big question in this case. How many people has to be in a group?
What constitutes a group? So if nothing happens on September 15th, it's a moot point. But if there are new regulations that go through, they would include a requirement to be in a group, and then we would have to find out what group size that means.
Exactly.
Okay. What about airlines? Exactly. Are the same airlines going to be flying? Is that going to work the same way?
Airlines is still the same. You can feel that a few flights are being canceled by some airlines. Southwest used to do 5 flights. 5. After that, they start doing 4, and now they're doing 2 flights a day.
So some changes, but basically the flights work the same. I'm sorry.
It will be the same. The flights won't be affected by the new regulations.
Okay. All right, good. Sorry to have interrupted you. We have a little bit of a connection problem, but it's good. I love your information. Okay, so if people want to contact you, Ernesto, for help with their trip to Cuba, because you are the go-to guy, how can they find you?
They can find us on Facebook, Instagram, to Cuba Travel, and the website is tocubatravel.com. In Facebook, we are To Cuba Travel Agency, and our website is tocubatravel.com.
Okay. All right, Ernesto. That's awesome. Thanks for being with us today. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.